So gazing upon the title of this video, you might be thinking, what the hell, Joel? Why are you ripping off Azzy and Brooke? And a year late, no less? And yes, I won't deny if those videos had some influence with my decision to make this video, but fuck it. This is my channel, these are my countdowns, and I do whatever the hell I want.
Also, this is not a top 1 like those other countdowns, so it's not a fucking ripoff, you play.
So I'm sure many of us as gamer boys and girls have had instances of getting really hyped for a game, only to be left extremely disappointed with the end product. The title is really self-explanatory here. There's only so many ways you can describe the concept of a disappointing game after all. So why a top 3? Well, this was actually going to be a full-length countdown at one point, but then I started to dislike the topic itself and dropped it for a while, and now I'm here. There are 2 reasons why the size of this list has shrunk considerably. 1, I didn't consider some of my original choices to be that disappointing anymore, either because my expectations weren't that high to begin with, or I decided to give the game another shot. And 2, I wanted to drop out every game that I disliked. This is because a big reason why I started to dislike the topic was for how the videos became really ranty about how the top entries are an insult to the series they're from or genre they represent. So as much as I would like to tell you to never play a certain version of one of my favorite games, we're not doing that today. Instead, I'm going to tell you about me getting way too excited for some games I probably shouldn't have, but still end up liking somehow. It's weird how things work out like that sometimes. So remember when I said that I dropped most of the games from that original list? Well, about that. If some of you remember, I have talked about Professor Layton and the Azran Legacy in a positive manner a long time ago, though even back then I did say it was my least favorite Layton game. But after mulling over it for about 4 years, I've come to the conclusion that Azran Legacy leaves a lot to be desired. Now, don't get me wrong, there are still things I like about this game. The characters are just as likable as before, the lineup of puzzles is one of, if not the best in the whole series, and the setting with the titular Azran Legacy is interesting. However, after that initial setup, the game just kind of falls apart. You see, what made the stories in the previous games so engaging were the mysteries that were woven together to slowly reveal the big picture as the game would draw to its conclusion. With Azran Legacy, the big mystery is the Azrans, but to even get to them, Layton and company have to travel around the world in search of these eggs and have them open something? I don't know. The problem here is that each area you travel to have their own respective mysteries to solve, and they have nothing to do with the overarching setup. As such, the story feels separated, and the pacing just kinda stops when you're searching for these things, and bad pacing is not a very good thing for a mystery game to have. And then there are the ending twists. Look, I won't go into detail here, but the twists that Azran Legacy pulls right near the end of the game are groan-inducing to say the least. They either come out of nowhere or feel cliched as fuck with no creativity or effort put in their execution. I know a lot of my problems with this game relate to the game's story, and as a puzzle game, Azran Legacy is definitely functional. But as the supposed grand finale of the Herschel-Layton saga, I just wanted more. When it comes to series with consistent quality, the Tales series is definitely up there, I'd say. But that doesn't mean I can't be a little disappointed in some of them, right? Like, for example, a game that shows huge promise with some of the best story trailers I've seen, as well as being a direct sequel to one of my favorite games in the series? Yeah. Now, me and Talezilia 2, we don't get along. Not that it's a bad game, it's just that for every great thing it has, there's tons of questionable design choices to follow. First of all, for a game that's supposedly built on the power of choice, barely any of the choices you make during the game matter in the long run. Sure, you might get some different dialogue depending on your choice, but the only choices that really matter are the ones that determine which ending you get, and that's kinda lame. And then there's the character of Luger, who's just flat as a pancake. Don't get me wrong, he isn't an insert for the player, but he has all this backstory built around him while his character just feels lifeless. And in a series where the characters are one of the main selling points, that's a big problem. But my biggest gripe with this game is how limited the gameplay feels. You see, outside of cities, you can only have 4 party members and you can't switch them out at will. And it just makes me ask, why? Even better, in the main story, the game throws you some convenient excuses to have these specific characters with Luger. It just feels stupid and makes some of the bosses a lot more difficult than they should be. I have other problems with the game too, like some of the character episodes being pretty forgettable, the depth system being an unnecessary roadblock, and some general nitpicks that bog the game down for me. I swear I still like the game for things like polishing the overall feel of the combat, but some of these issues are just way too big for me to ignore. I think I'll stick with the adventure of the good boy and the busty spirit lord, thank you very much. Let me get something out of the way real quick. I don't think there's a single terrible Ratchet Clank game. I've played pretty much every game in the series and I've found enjoyment in each game, whether it's being made by Insomniac or not. But that doesn't mean this series is safe from disappointments! So I was actually quite excited for Ratchet Clank Full Frontal Assault back when it was coming out, mainly because it looked like it was going back to the classic formula of upgrading weapons after All For One's slight departure. The new villain in the trailers also looked very promising, so I was very optimistic about this one. Looking back though, I definitely should have been more cautious. Maybe then I would have noticed the signs. For those who don't know, Full Frontal Assault is a tower defense game, unlike most other RNC games. And yes, that right there is the first problem. While I do enjoy the overall gameplay as they did bring back the upgrading weapon spiel, the whole defense aspect really ruins it. I do like taking over enemy bases as they offer up some good old RNC action, but every time the enemy approaches my base and I have to go back to defend it, that's when I start to have a little less fun. I also really don't like how getting weapons is handled in this game. Instead of having vendors where you can buy weapons permanently, here they're scattered over the planet in these capsules. And I'd be fine with this if I could just keep the weapon once I find it, but no! After you leave a planet, all of the weapons you found are taken from you, and you have to find them from the capsules again on another planet if you want to keep using it, and that gets a big ol' load of no from me. And as a final nail to the coffin, the story is actually just shit. I was very stupid for even thinking that the plot was going to be anything but hot garbage, but you show me this masked villain and made me think it was Chairman Drek from the first game, and fuck. I actually just hate video games.